Welcome, survivors, burnout community, and those just interested. It's Kelly Buboltz, trainer, author, speaker, and your burnout prevention mentor. Burnout is not taboo. It's our reality in this chaotic, fast-paced world. But we're not going to let it drive the narrative to our stories. We're going to do something about it. So let's dig in. Welcome back to the series Think Different. We're going to be digging into some generational insights on how we can include all generations as we continue this change, as we continue to create agile teams. If you're not already connected, connect with me out on social media or subscribe to this channel as this series begins to meet the modern workforce where they're at instead of battling this reality. Now, this topic is interesting because it actually came out of multiple conversations where I would be talking about how we can utilize boomers in fractional work as they begin to exit to retirement. How can we utilize Gen Z, the newest generation in the workforce, in technology, in AI, because it comes a little bit easier to them and they can adapt to that type of environment. And interestingly enough, a participant mentioned, what about Gen X? And I haven't been talking about Gen X, so that one's on me. So that's what this episode will be in, is where does Gen X fit? And it's actually the productivity bridge that we've been looking for. So as I began researching behaviors of Gen X, I found out they're the bridge. They're the bridge between these boomers that are extremely experienced and have this tribal knowledge and the other generations that are looking for this massive amount of change. And why this is going to be important is the workforce is shifting in 2025. So half of the workforce will be millennials and Gen Z. So they're going to be pushing for this change, and they're going to be pushing for technology as part of this change to make sure it's sustainable. So that's remote work, that's flexibility work, that's integrating systems so we're not doing more. They're exhausted. But Gen X is still 29%. So that's a big hunk of people in the workforce that are providing high value. They've been trained, they've experienced some things, maybe not at the longevity of boomers, but they still have experienced many things. And there's 4 things I found out through this research and referencing some of our Gen X workforce on the productivity that we can actually gain because they're the bridge. They're the bridge between this generation that had to learn through hands, long experiences, and that takes time. These new generations are learning through different avenues, videos, training, which we all know is just a little bit different. It's theory, but when you put it into practice, sometimes that doesn't mesh. So that's what we're going to focus on, is the 4 areas that Gen X will bridge that will actually bring productivity between the generations. And the first one is their adaptability to technology changes. If you think about it, they're the generation that had to adapt to having internet. They're the generation that had the main workforce or the driving of the workforce during the digital transformations. And so they had to figure out, how is this new technology going to work in our workforce when we're going from paper all the way over here to technology? And that's what's interesting about Gen X, is they've had to learn to adapt because this is what's coming. If you picture what's going on right now, technology is advancing faster than humans can keep up. And so we have to adapt to what is coming. The exact same scenario, just at a faster pace. So Gen X has already been through this. They went from this concept of paper and calling for information and having to walk over to this person for information, to internet, to email, to inventory systems and ERPs and software to run our operations. So they've actually had to adapt the most in that type of skill sets. So they can actually help on change management as we adopt new technologies and softwares and what is AI, and they've been through it. So what are some steps that were successful when they were gaining internet and email and software, and what are some things that they did as a team during the digital transformation, and what didn't work so well? What would they have done differently if it occurs again, because it's happening again? The second thing I want you to focus on, utilizing Gen X for productivity bridge, is independent problem solvers. they are very self-sufficient, and they kind of had to be, because boomers were like trial by fire and learn as you go, because that's how they were brought up. And so they had to kind of figure things out on their own, really know what resources they could get information from, resources that just didn't work very well for them. And that critical thinking has groomed them to be very self-sufficient in problem solving. And so they can seek solutions without constant direction. They don't need to be micromanaged. They actually need their leadership team to back up so they can critically think and lead their teams. So they're going to be excellent leaders right now in change management, because not only have they had to adapt technology changes in their operation over time, they have also had to problem solve without so many resources available. So their critical thinking skills are fairly high. Independent problem solvers. That's number 2. The third thing I want you to think about with Gen X is their outcomes result focused. And some of this just came from some of the dips we've had in the economy over the years, some of the things they have seen. And so when budgets are tight and you're going through layoffs, when you're not sure what will come of next year because of your customer shifts, all those highs and lows, you had to become very outcome results focused just to survive in those type of economies. So that means you need priorities. And you need realistic goals. Like, we're not going to break records this year. We're just going to keep our workforce paid and the lights on. And they've been through that. So they can actually manage that between what do we need to do now? Very temporary. We just need to get through this a month or a quarter, and then we'll be there. And then what do we need to do long term? Because again, they've been through it a few times. So being that outcome results oriented focus will bring a balance to sometimes when things are chaotic or they're changing at a fast pace, which they are, they can back up and not have such an emotional reaction to it, because they know, okay, we've done this before, we've been through something similar. Let's take the first step. Or let's pivot over here for a short term, and then let's get back to the big projects at base. So managing that balance between temp and long-term outcomes, and then keeping that results focus to keep a pulse forward, make sure that we're not overreacting and making impulse decisions. They're going to keep a nice balance there. So the outcomes results focus of Gen X is going to aid in this change management as it continues to move forward. And then the fourth one that I want to talk about is bridging communication gaps. And this was interesting when I started talking to people about what's the difference between, Gen X that you like and Gen X that you don't like. And a big thing that came up is they actually reduce friction with diverse teams, because they have always been in between. They've been in between boomers that want it this way and millennials that want it this way. Boomers said, it's not broken, don't fix it. Millennials are like, we need change. We can't live like our parents did. And yes, I'm being a little dramatic and stereotypical about these generations right now, but they were kind of sandwiched. And that's why they're kind of the silent generation. It's because they would navigate this in the background and be supportive of both generations. And when I started asking about behaviors that came out during that, it was interesting that they were natural mentors of these soft skills in conflict resolution, because they had to bridge the gap. And they had to bridge between these communication avenues where one generation grew up with very good people skills, or at least interactive skills, and a new generation that wants to be more technological and remote. So bridging the gap of that was put on their backs, and they figured it out. And in turn, it ended up actually reducing friction in between spread generations and diverse teams, and creating this nice cohesive balance of what can work within our generation. So they would be really good mentors for new hires, really good mentors for Gen Z that has lacked soft skills, as we've been seeing, and it's to everyone's doing. They're a technological generation, and we put that in their hands. So that, coupled with the pandemic of being isolated and away from home and while they're going to school, created a generation that struggles with soft skills. They struggle picking up the phone. They struggle with having that healthy conflict conversation. but they can get there. And they have even more resources to learn from that. And now they have internal resources inside your organization, such as Gen X, to mentor with. Now, one thing that I do suggest is that if you're already utilizing an assessment, or I practice with DISC behavioral science, is matching up by DISC. And let me show you why. Different DISC work styles will struggle with other work styles because they're different. They're opposite of them. So for example, a stressful situation for a D, which is dominance, or a REDS, is they might be forceful or bold. They might be a little bit more over demanding and restless and want to move things forward. Okay, let's change. Change is happening. Why aren't we getting on that? And so that will come off very rude and crude sometimes to other work styles because they're moving so fast and they want to push. They want to keep going. Lining a D person that's maybe low on soft skills and needs to learn or needs a mentor with a Gen X mentor that's a D work style, they've already been through it and they know how to soften those conversations and they know how to get people on board and move a few steps forward so we can have progress. So lining up two Ds, one that has experience and they're closing those communication gaps, and then one who's looking to learn and sponging up all that information and behaviors, will aid faster than opposite work styles. Because let me show you the other one. A complete opposite of a D is an S. So they're very passive and background supportive. If you have an S supporting or mentoring a D, they're already mismatched. All right, because their behaviors aren't the same. So say I'm a new hire and I'm a high D, which means I want to move fast. I want to move things forward. And someone who's mentoring me is slow and steady and methodical. They're not understanding where I'm coming from. So it's getting even more frustrating. I'm saying, I want to move things forward. The team is just thinking about this and going in a data analysis paralysis, and we need to move. We're behind the 8 ball. And an S is like, well, we just need to have some more conversations and we need to It's already like we're disconnected. So moving Gen X into a mentorship role, but also pairing work styles, will get rid of this apprehension that no one gets it. No one's listening. Because they get it. They've been there. They're a high D too, and they've had to work through this. And that's where that productivity bridge is going to really enhance your organization, because when you can create these environments of understanding while also bridging generations and linking work styles, that's a boost. That's a boost right there. And you can just already feel the energy momentum happening. So Gen X is not a lost generation. It is not a silent generation. They have always been here providing value, but through 4 areas, you can actually have a productivity bridge through change by giving them space to speak about how they've adapted to change and these big leaps that we've taken over the last couple decades. They're independent problem solvers. So what behaviors are they practicing that we can replicate? They are outcome and result focused. So again, when it's go time to shift or get things through the goal line, do you have Gen X in that room helping make those decisions and move that forward, refocus so we can reroute later? Do you have Gen X in that room so we can refocus and reroute short term and then reset again in the long term? And then are you utilizing them in mentorship programs to bridge communication gaps between generations so we can all be on this journey together and not scattered across the woods? But in order to do any of these things, we have to begin matching people to their work styles, really finding their strengths and understanding one another. And seeing Gen X as a productivity bridge instead of just another working generation, in order to do that, you have to start to think different.
I know you're not lazy. Most people in burnout are high performers, those serving others before themselves. Don't discount this step today, the action in which you focused on your self-growth. Piecing together the puzzle is half the journey. Rediscovering yourself, energy, and establishing new habits is the other. Do not underestimate the untapped inner strength inside you. Explore more resources on my website to move from zombie mode back to liveliness. See you soon.